Sri Lanka's big comeback, Sri Lanka, from crisis to recovery. In 2022, Sri Lanka faced one of the most difficult periods in its modern history. Fuel shortages, long queues, power cuts, rising prices. And then came the protests. Images from Sri Lanka were seen around the world as thousands of people demanded political change. The country's economy was under enormous pressure, and for many people, everyday life became extremely difficult. But just a few years later, Sri Lanka is telling a very different story. The country is recovering. Tourism is returning. Businesses are moving again. Inflation has fallen dramatically compared with the crisis period, and the economy has started rebuilding. So, the big question is Sri Lanka really making a major economic comeback? Today, we look at Sri Lanka's journey from crisis to recovery, and what could happen next. From economic crisis to national emergency. To understand Sri Lanka's recovery, we first need to remember just how serious the crisis became. By 2022, Sri Lanka was facing a severe shortage of foreign currency. The country struggled to pay for essential imports, including fuel, food, and medicine. Long lines appeared at fuel stations. People spent hours waiting for petrol and diesel. Power cuts affected homes and businesses. Prices increased, and ordinary families felt the pressure. The crisis was not caused by just one problem. Years of economic challenges, debt pressures, reduced foreign currency earnings, and policy decisions all contributed to the situation. As frustration grew, protests spread across the country. The political situation changed dramatically, and Sri Lanka entered a new chapter. But changing the government was only the beginning. The much bigger challenge was rebuilding the economy. The road to recovery after the crisis, Sri Lanka had to take difficult steps. The country worked with international partners and began a major economic reform process. The goal was simple, but extremely difficult: stabilize the economy, control inflation, rebuild foreign currency reserves, restructure debt, and restore confidence. For ordinary people, however, recovery did not happen overnight. Higher taxes and other economic adjustments created new challenges. Many Sri Lankans continued to struggle with the cost of living. So while the numbers started improving, life was still difficult for many families. This is an important point. Economic recovery on paper and recovery in everyday life are not always the same thing. But gradually, some of the biggest signs of crisis started to disappear. Fuel availability improved. Power cuts became less common. Inflation came down significantly from the extreme levels seen during the crisis. And confidence slowly began to return. Tourism is coming back. One of Sri Lanka's biggest advantages is tourism. For a relatively small island, Sri Lanka offers beaches, wildlife, mountains, tea country, ancient cities, and world-famous cultural sites. And after the crisis period, tourism began recovering. More international visitors started arriving again. Hotels became busier. Restaurants, transport services, tour guides, and small businesses benefited from the return of tourists. Tourism is extremely important because it brings foreign currency into the country. And Sri Lanka needs foreign currency to support imports, strengthen reserves, and improve economic stability. The challenge now is to keep growing tourism while improving infrastructure, services, and Sri Lanka's international image. If Sri Lanka can attract more high-spending visitors, not just more visitors, the tourism sector could become an even more powerful part of the economy. Colombo is changing. The recovery story is also visible in Colombo. The city remains Sri Lanka's main economic center. The port, financial sector, tourism industry, construction, technology businesses, and international trade all play important roles here. Colombo also has one major geographical advantage. Sri Lanka sits close to one of the world's busiest shipping routes. That gives the country enormous potential in maritime trade and logistics. The port of Colombo is already a major asset. If Sri Lanka continues improving ports, logistics, transport, and investment opportunities, the country could strengthen its position as a regional business hub. But competition is intense. India is growing rapidly. Bangladesh has developed a major manufacturing sector. Singapore and Dubai are already global business and logistics centers. So Sri Lanka cannot simply